Okay, look, college is the biggest scam on earth. Every year we hand a teenager a pen and say, "Congrats, kid, sign here to own more money than your first 3 jobs combined will ever be able to pay back."
And if you'd care to take a dare, I'll make a bet with you.
My name's Ed Dumps, and today we're going to be breaking down how college started, how it mutated, and how it went from a useful ladder to the middle class into a glorified hamster wheel that's powered by Red Bull and ChatGPT. And yes, I'll be covering the very few exceptions. Calm down, Clark. I know your dad's a very successful neurosurgeon.
You doctor yet?
No, Dad, I'm 12.
Talk to me when you doctor.
Believe it or not, colleges didn't begin as football factories with billion-dollar stadiums and 12 different vice presidents of student engagement. They began as elite schools. They were selective, demanding, and built to train the future rulers, judges, and church leaders. These weren't places for the average villager either. They were designed for the people who actually mattered in the world. Basically, think the Mages College from Skyrim. And yes, I said Skyrim, not Oblivion, and not one of the older games. I grew up on Skyrim, and you can deal with it. So let's get started. Medieval Europe, where all terrible things always start. Universities showed up in medieval Europe around the 1100s. These were elite institutions designed to train the people who would run courts, advise rulers, and manage the church. The curriculum had 2 tracks, the trivium, which is grammar, rhetoric, the art of persuasion, and logic, and the quadrivium, arithmetic, geometry, astronomy, and music. Once you mastered the basics, you specialized in your chosen field. Instead of mastering beer pong and experimenting with STDs, these guys were sitting around debating which of the 3 popes at the time was the real one. Basically, the medieval version of picking your favorite Spider-Man. Sorry, Catholics. So why go at all? For one, it was a ticket out of obscurity, a way to move from farm work into influence to the church or state. It was also career training for rare respected jobs like law or theology, which actually came with money and status. Just as importantly, a university seal carried authority. It gave you credibility that opened doors almost anywhere. If your family had the resources to send you, odds were you weren't going to be stuck as a pig farmer. Tuition wasn't measured in 6 figures either. Students often paid with books, which were rare, hand-copied, and incredibly valuable. Or they relied upon support from a patron, like the church or even their city. The cost was steep for the time, but it wasn't financial quicksand. Most importantly, it matched the payoff. If you finished, a career was almost always waiting. Seats were rare, but degrees led to specific jobs, and the path forward was clear if you were admitted. Pricey? Sure. Scam? Not yet.
But I have a bad feeling about this.
Pretty soon, the world scaled. Trade expanded, empires rose, and governments grew more complex. The printing press in the 1400s made knowledge cheaper to spread, and suddenly, ideas could travel faster than armies. By the Renaissance, universities weren't just teaching theology, they became homes for science, philosophy, and the beginnings of the modern state. During the Enlightenment, universities turned into laboratories of reason. Figures like Galileo and Newton reshaped the curriculum with astronomy, mathematics, and natural philosophy. You can blame them for your terrible homework. Higher education became less about producing clergy and more about producing knowledge itself. By the 1800s, industrialization pushed the change even further. Nations needed doctors for their cities, engineers for their railroads, and teachers for their growing populations. Nobody actually said they wanted lawyers or politicians, but they kept producing plenty of those too.
Hey, we don't serve their kind here.
What?
Governments built more universities, turning higher education from a privilege of the elite into a practical tool for the state. Like everything the government gets involved with, it would soon start to go downhill. Cost rose, but values still kept pace. The system worked, for now. What began as an elite path for priests and lawyers was evolving to a system for the masses. More opportunity, yes, but also the first cracks in the foundation. Higher cost and degrees that didn't always deliver. By the early 20th century, universities were no longer just for clergy or nobility. Industrialization had created new professions, and the United States especially had begun pushing for higher education as the key to upward mobility. Enrollment exploded as the middle-class families started sending their kids to college.
Oh, back to school, to prove to Dad that I'm not a fool.
U.S. college enrollment grew from about 250,000 in 1900 to over 1.5 million by 1940. This was the age of professionalism. Medicine, engineering, business, and teaching all standardized into careers that now required formal degrees. College became less about a rare elite path and more about building a modern workforce. Basically, society invented more jobs that came with paperwork, and suddenly you needed a diploma to prove that you weren't just making everything up. People got tired of calling their local doctor every time they sneezed and being told to swallow mercury or lobotomize their hysterical wives.
Just wait a damn minute. I'm not for sale.
After World War II, the GI Bill turbocharged the system. Millions of returning soldiers received government support for tuition, housing, and books. It was one of the biggest democratizations of education in history. I wrote the word democratization in my script and I have no idea what it means. The GI Bill created a massive surge in college graduates and cemented the idea that a degree was the ticket to the middle class. And it worked, for a while. The degree actually paid off. Jobs were waiting and tuition was still affordable. The system was expanding, but it was also aligned with reality. But here's the catch. When everyone has a degree, the degree itself becomes less special.
Louie, guess what? What? I'm not special anymore. Hooray!
That's when credential creep began. Jobs started requiring diplomas, not because the work demanded it, but because not having one made you look too dumb to trust with real responsibility. By the mid-20th century, college had gone mass market. Still valuable, still accessible, but the cracks were widening. Expansion was a double-edged sword. It gave millions access, but it also created dependency on credentials that would fuel rising costs for decades to come. By the late 1900s, the balance tipped, and that's where the modern college scam started to take place.
Here I come. Oh, here I come. Oh.
By the mid-20th century, college was basically expected by every middle-income family in America. It was no longer just accessible, it was mainstream. Millions of students were enrolling, universities were building bigger campuses, and costs were rising faster than inflation. Families felt it, students felt it, and for the first time, student loans were becoming normal parts of college experience. This was the turning point. College stopped being expensive but manageable and started becoming expensive by design. The question is, how did that switch get flipped?
Execute Order 66.
Yes, my lord.
Are y'all having fun yet? All that was just the boring lead up. Now is when the real scamming McScammersons start to take place.
You are a idiot.
In 1965, President Lyndon B. Johnson signed the Higher Education Act. It created government-guaranteed student loans. Private banks made the loans, but federal governments promised to cover the losses. Translation, banks got paid no matter what. Lending to a broke 18-year-old student wasn't risky, it was now guaranteed money. Then, in 1980, under President Jimmy Carter, Parent Plus loans were created. At first, there were still strict limits. But in 1992, under President George H.W. Bush, Congress blew those limits off the map. Parents could now borrow up to the full cost of attendance, minus aid, with nothing more than a basic credit check. That is when the trap started to click into place. The governments guaranteed the risk, lenders stopped caring, and when colleges realized they could raise prices as high as they want, they went crazy. The spigot was wide open, and the only people not cashing in were the students. The scam was no longer in the shadows. It was baked into the system.
You can't keep getting away with it!
In 1970, tuition was about $500, or about $4,000 in today's money. By 2000, it was 7 times higher. Inflation, on the other hand, had only tripled. College wasn't competing with inflation anymore. It was blowing past it. Side note, the fact that I had to say that inflation only tripled is insane. At this rate, by 2055, your Big Mac meal is going to cost nearly $40. Economists gave this trend a name, the Bennett hypothesis. Reagan's educational secretary flat out said that every time governments pumped more loan money into the system, colleges just raised the prices. And the math proved him right. For every $1 of new federal aid, schools raised prices by about 60 cents. Families didn't save money, colleges pocketed it. And once schools realized students could always borrow more money, they went wild. New gyms, fancier dorms, climbing walls, lazy rivers. The bill grew faster than the actual college education. Loans weren't helping students afford college, they were helping Texas A&M afford bigger and better cult meetings. At this point, the scam was no longer hiding. With unlimited loan money floating around, colleges didn't just raise prices, they expanded the menu. Entire departments popped up in fields like sociology, anthropology, women's studies, liberal arts, and fashion design. These weren't brand new ideas, but in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, they scaled fast, and every one of them carried the same price tag as nursing, engineering, or medicine, even though the payoff wasn't even close. Nursing, education, and law are all degrees that you need. They train you for careers that require real expertise, and the payoff is huge. Engineering grads average nearly $1 million in lifetime ROI. Nursing is around $600,000. But liberal arts and humanities? They average around $200,000. According to one major study, 1 in 4 bachelor programs now deliver a negative return on investment. That's right, negative. You'd literally make more money never going to college at all. That's not mentioning the fact that there are tons of clown show majors too. You've got the classics, women's studies, liberal arts, and anthropology, but then there are my favorites. Queer pottery, interpretive dance theory, and historical basket weaving. Except now, the basket has to represent systematic oppression, you have to use the right neopronouns when you present it, and the final exam is a TikTok rant about the patriarchy.
A rancid apple core, 2 worm-eaten banana peels, a moldy rice cake, a dried-up pickle, tin of sardine, bones, a pile of broken eggshells, an old smushed-up rotten gizzard with maggots all over it.
Okay, it's worth it.
These programs cost just about as much as nursing or law, but the only thing they prepare you for is posting Twitter threads about how unfair capitalism is. And before anyone comments, well, I got a degree in liberal arts and I make $120,000 a year. Great. Shut up. Some people win the lottery too. That doesn't make it a smart investment. The averages are the point, not the outliers. And even when ROI isn't technically negative, the math still sucks.
Let me break it down for you, Mordecai.
If you spend 4 years and $40,000 on a degree that only boosts your salary by $10,000 a year, you just lost. 4 years of income, 4 years of raises, 4 years of real-world experience. That opportunity cost is what you're losing. Here's an alternative that nobody has the balls to tell you nowadays. Work for those 4 years instead.
How dare you!
Let's be conservative and say that you only make $25,000 a year, even though most full-time jobs would pay more than that. That's $100,000 in earnings. Invest just half of it, which is $50,000, into a basic index fund at 7%. By retirement, that snowballs into over $500,000. That's more than double the lifetime ROI of a liberal arts degree, and without the debt or wasting 4 years of your life. And I'm not just talking about things that sound good on paper. Take myself, for example. I do commercial HVAC. 3 years ago, I had no money, no real job experience, and I didn't go to any kind of trade school.
What a loser.
I started as a helper making $18 an hour, which is very normal here in Texas. I learned everything on the job, I worked hard, and I moved up. Now 3 years later, I'm a technician. I own a house, I paid cash for a new car, and I could afford for my wife to stay at home. I'm not saying this to brag, I'm saying it as proof that you don't need a degree to build a good life quickly if you're willing to work and manage your money. My point isn't that everyone should do blue-collar work. My point is that there are plenty of paths outside college that can put you ahead in just a few years. Meanwhile, millions of students waste those same years racking up debt for degrees that will never pay them back. Here's a point that solidifies the fact that most degrees nowadays are complete BS. A Harvard study found that over 60% of job postings in middle skill fields required a bachelor's degree, but only about 16% of people in those exact same jobs actually had one. That means that employers were just slapping degree required labels on roles that didn't actually need one. And if you see a job that says degree required, but the work doesn't actually need it, there's a good chance you could still get hired without one. The requirement is often just lazy HR filtering, not a real necessity for the job. So when people say, well, I want a job, but everything I want requires a degree, the truth is, not really. The workforce itself proves it. Millions of people are already doing those same jobs without one. The filter just makes it harder to get in the door and convinces people to buy a degree that they didn't really need in the first place. By the 2000s, college had all the scam ingredients in place. Unlimited loans, rising tuition, credential creep, and now schools competing with each other over luxury resorts, lazy rivers, gourmet dining halls, and climbing gyms. Your tuition check wasn't just paying for classes, it was paying for amenities that look nice but don't actually help you get a job. Now, full disclosure, I'm a diehard Texas Longhorns fan. I love the atmosphere, the packed stadium, and yes, the spectacle of college football. And I don't hate that Texas is throwing huge NIL money around to get top players. But let's be real. Is my love for college football worth the billions of dollars in student loan debt that pile up every year? Absolutely not. At this point, the scam is egregious. In 2006, Grad Plus loans opened the floodgates for graduate students. Just like Parent Plus, they let you borrow up to the full cost of attendance with almost no cap. Law schools, MBA programs, and even many master's degrees raised prices year after year because they knew that students could borrow unlimited amounts of money to cover it. Translation, if a school says the cost is $90,000 a year, the government basically says, sure, borrow it, good luck. By the 2010s, 2 out of every 3 college grads left school with debt. The average balance was over $30,000. For graduate students, 6-figure debt became normal. And because bankruptcy protections were stripped away in the 80s and 90s, this debt follows you for decades. It isn't just bad budgeting, it's a system designed so you can't escape. Return on investment kept shrinking. STEM and health degrees still pay off, but many master's programs, liberal arts, and social service degrees have payoffs so low that they never justify the debt. Again, a major analysis found that roughly 1 in 4 bachelor programs would produce negative ROI. In other words, you could literally skip college, do nothing for 4 years, and then start working, and still come out ahead compared to a lot of these useless degrees. By the late 2010s, student loan debt in America hit over $1.5 trillion. That's more than credit card debt and more than car loans. It's second only to mortgages. It's delayed home buying, it's delayed starting families, and it's delayed or even destroyed the idea of saving for retirement. Student debt isn't just personal burden anymore, it's reshaped an entire generation. College went from being the ladder to the middle class to the disgraceful parasite that makes it way harder to get there. Like a tapeworm, but instead of making you tired and sexually undesirable, it makes you poor, tired, and sexually undesirable. The scam is now complete. From medieval Europe to modern America, higher education is morphed from elite training to mass access to a full-blown debt machine. Expansion wasn't necessarily the problem. The problem was price, perverse incentives, and broken promises. Does all of this mean that degrees are useless? Of course not. Surgeons, engineers, nurses, lawyers, society needs all of those. And I'm not saying that you can't learn anything or come out on top when you get your liberal arts degree. But here's the scam. The system tells everyone that they need a degree. It sells them on debt. And it pretends that all programs are worth the same. The result? Over $1.5 trillion in student loan debt. Generations who delay buying homes, starting family, and saving for retirement, and millions of students who wasted years and tens of thousands of dollars on degrees that will never pay them back. So before you sign the dotted line on a $100,000 loan for a piece of paper that tells people that you're smart, ask one question. What's in your wallet? Wait, no. What's this actually worth? Because if the answer is not much, congratulations, you just found the scam. My name is Ed Dumps, and this has been my first video. Please leave a comment below telling me what you'd like to see me talk about next. And if you'd like to watch more videos of mine, then please leave a like so I can start doing this more often. Thank you, I love you, don't die, and have fun.